Alright, peace be upon you, ladies and gentlemen. How are you? Now, in today's video, I thought I would just pop a quick one out while I'm driving to work. I just want to talk about faith. Faith and how faith is at the heart of every single worldview. Despite people denying it, despite especially the secularists and the atheists, he takes it as a great insult to say that he has faith. But oh, you best believe that that man has faith 100%. Faith is at the heart of every single worldview. And by faith, I mean trusting in things that are beyond our own experience. And there's nothing wrong with that. In order for us to create or to form for ourselves a complete worldview about who we are, where we came from, where we're going, we have to have trust in something. The things like ancient history or the distant future are by their very nature faith-based propositions. So if you look at us, right, and it's just the religious man, the guy who believes in his Lord, he's going to be honest about his faith. I'm honest about my faith, that I have trust that these things which the Quran promises, that God promises in the Quran, are going to come to pass, like the judgment, hereafter, the resurrection, all these things. I'm honest that it's an element of faith. It doesn't mean I don't know. It's just a different kind of knowing to, let's say, okay, what's something that we know right now? My underwear is colored green. This is something that I can confirm right now, or my socks are black. Talking about the future can't be known in that way because by its nature, again, it has not come to pass. And the atheist secularist does not understand that his worldview is built on a huge element of faith. So, for example, I accept that it's faith to say that we will be resurrected before the Lord. I trust that. But it's just as much an element of faith to say that somebody will not be resurrected, that when we die, it's just going to be an eternity of black, an eternal slumber, and this will be the end of our ephemeral interlude of existence. That's also a faith-based proposition because they can't confirm that. They don't know. Another thing is not just the future, but also the past. Evolution, the idea that we have evolved from a primordial life form over, I don't know how many thousands, millions, billions of years, whatever storytelling that they say in their textbooks. This is an element of faith. No atheist has directly gone and confirmed the fossil evidence of all of the claims that they believe in. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can't. Nobody has the means, nor the wherewithal, nor the knowledge, nor the ability, nor the resources to go and confirm all of these things. Like, for example, in the Quran, all these stories we get regarding Abraham and the prophets of old, God says these things happened as a matter of fact. So Jesus raising people from the dead, him being born of a virgin, Abraham being thrown into the fire and it becoming a means of coolness for him by God's leave, Moses passing the children of Israel through the sea. I can't go in the past and confirm all these things, but I trust in the testimony of the Quran. And all I would ask is that the atheist secularists understand that his worldview is built on trust as well. He believes in these textbooks and he cannot confirm that everything that those textbooks are saying are correct. He just can't. He accepts them as valid. He sees the scholars, the people in the universities, the guys, the PhDs writing these textbooks as a trustworthy source of information, whereas I don't, and I see the Quran as a trustworthy source of information, and he doesn't. So again, his worldview is built on an element of faith. By its nature, things, again, of the past and of the future, they are faith-based. We can't know them like we can know the color of our underwear or the color of our socks. We have to believe, trust in the testimony of another person in order to have a complete and coherent worldview. It's just the secularist, his whole paradigm is built upon the knowledge of man, the humanism, celebrating man and his achievements and his glory, his accomplishments. And it's a problem for them. They find it quite bothersome to admit that they don't know many of the things which they claim to know. Oh yeah, I know for a fact that I evolved from Homo Pithecus, whatever, however many hundreds of thousands of years ago. How do you know that? Oh yeah, the fossil. Did you see the fossil record? Oh yeah, I went to the museum. And how do you know those aren't fake? How do you know those are really that old? Oh yeah, they did carbon dating. Oh, see, you trust in their testimony and you trust in the process by which they say they have determined the age of these fossils, and you trust the narrative they tell you that these fossils are some kind of intermediary between man and some other primordial creature. There's a lot of trust that goes into this. Every worldview is in the Quranic term deen. We all have deen, we all have faith, we all have a doctrine which we hold to. And all I would ask, whether it's a secularist, whether it's an atheist, whether it's a Christian, is just ask yourself, why do you trust these claims? Just first be humble enough to accept that you have trust and faith in these testimonies. Ask yourself why. I know exactly why I trust in the testimony of the Holy Quran. It calls us to right guidance and goodness. It has been transformative in my life, its message. It turns puerile, childish boys into wise, strong men. It turns foolish, lewd, lascivious women into beautiful girls, into beautiful, honorable, chaste women. The power of this book and the consistency of its doctrine and it confirming the previous scriptures, this is among many other reasons why I trust in its testimony. And all I would ask you guys is, why do you trust the testimony of all these atheists, professors in the university and these so-called scientific textbooks? What about that has led you to believe in the veracity of its integrity? But you do have faith. You do have faith. You believe. To say that we all came from a big bang, what have you personally done to prove that? What you need to do with these atheists, for my believing brothers and sisters, whenever you're discussing with them, apply their own standards to themselves. They will put such a high level of burden of proof on the scripturalist, on the man who accepts that his worldview has an element of faith. They'll say, oh, prove it. Prove that these things happen. Prove that Jesus raised people from the dead. Prove that Abraham was thrown in a fire and the fire became a means of coolness. Prove. Let's start applying that to them. Prove. You prove right now. And you can point to the testimony of the Quran. They'll say, no, that's not good enough. You need to prove it. Okay. You prove for me right now that those fossils are real. They're not fake. They're as old as people say they are, and they are what they say they are, like the intermediary between man and whatever other creature. They can't do it. They can't do it. Man is not able to, on his own, construct a fully complete worldview purely based on his experience. In this life, we are expected, by the time at least we're the age of 40, but also before then as well, maturity comes. We are expected at some point to have formed a reasonable judgment as to, again, who we are, where we came from, where we're going, what our purpose is. And these things require an element of faith and belief and trust. Every worldview boils down to this. And, they'll say, like, they don't have beliefs. I don't have beliefs. I only have facts. That's not true. That's a lie. That's a lie. And, it's just this distinction that they try to make between themselves and the more traditionally religious man is just non-existent. It just isn't. Because in order for you to make all these wild claims, I mean, we can get into the globe Earth hoax. The stars are billions and trillions of light years away, and Alpha Centauri is X amount of weight and X amount of size and made of X, Y, and Z material. What have you done to prove any of this stuff? Again, it's all faith and trust and testimony. So whenever you, all of my brothers and sisters listening to this, whenever you guys get in an argument with these secular atheists who love to boast of their so-called reason, that they're not interested in magic and hocus pocus fairy tales. That's not true, because the globe Earth and evolution is nothing but hocus pocus fairy tales. But nonetheless, whenever they try to boast of being these hardcore rational empiricists only interested in the facts, and their worldview is based upon first-hand evidence, just start asking these questions. How do they know this? How do they know that? And you're going to see it eventually boils down to trusting in the testimony of some man they've never met. That's a faith. That's a deen. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that's really all I got to say on the matter. I hope this talk was a blessing. And yeah, peace to you. Remember, deceit abounds, so keep your eyes wide open. Peace out. Peace and blessings in the name of the Most High, viewer. My name is Walid Naeem, and I am a zealous submitter to the one true God, the creator of all mankind. Do you notice something wrong with the world? Something strange? Despite us having a church, synagogue, and mosque in every neighborhood, how has this entire Western civilization fallen into abject atheism, nihilism, and savagery? Why does life just seem so dull, so meaningless, and so devoid of anything real in the Occidental world? Despite the ubiquitous presence of these religious institutions, why are our so-called Muslim sons in large numbers drinking, smoking, partying, and chasing after women, with no seeming desire to do anything more with their life other than satisfy their base pleasures, when God has commanded them to be clean, righteous, and responsible leaders of their community? And why are our hijabi so-called Muslim daughters walking around with tight jeans that reveal their figure, with TikTok accounts posting semi-provocative, self-absorbed videos of themselves online for the world to see, when God has commanded them to lengthen their garments and be modest in their mannerisms? What has happened here? These young men and women are supposed to be making themselves right before God while raising the next generation of ardent defenders of the holy faith. But it seems that Islam features no more in their lives other than a scarf on their head, a Friday fidgeting around in the mosque when their parents forced them to go against their will, or a decorative hanger in their car. At this rate, if God allows us to continue going down the road it is, then Islam and the Quran will become pretty much non-existent in the lives of most of our descendants, if it wasn't already non-existent now. If we do not take a stand soon, in a few generations our children's children will likely be indistinguishable from the secular West. Is that the kind of world we want to live in? Our kids to live in? A world practically devoid of the remembrance of the one God and all things sane? I obviously can't speak for you, but for my own self, I can personally say, count me out of it. I'm not going to sit here and just watch my brothers and sisters, those who claim to believe in God alone, believe in Judgment Day, His prophets and angels, and all the other aspects of this holy creed, get duped into going to hell. I'm not going to let this happen without at least something of an effort on my end to reroute this dark trajectory. So, again, how in the world do we end up here? There is a mosque in practically every neighborhood in the West, and no shortage of donations that get dropped in their boxes. They have had lots of funding, lots of time, and unquestioning support from their respective congregations, yet somehow have been run over by the secular atheist. All of their so-called Muslim children go to the atheist, secular public schools for most of their week to be taught beliefs that are completely incompatible with the Quran. And we wonder why they have ended up the way they are. If these houses, and by these houses I mean the mosques, were truly of God, that were doing everything right, then why would our Lord let them get so decisively trampled upon by their enemies? Why do the wicked have all of the reins of power here? Clearly, something is not adding up. Well, it is my thesis here today that the vast, vast majority of mosques that exist in this world today have lost their way and follow a religion which is completely foreign to the Quran. This is why they have failed so miserably in the West, and it seems that God has forgotten them. In truth, the real reason behind their shortcoming is that they, and many of us, have forgotten God Himself, which is why He has left us here collecting our bitter receipts. So, what are my exact criticisms of the mosques today? As a Muslim and a man committed to the truth above all else, what are my personal gripes with their institution, which claims to be for God? The first glaring problem I can think of is that the majority of people who call themselves Muslim have allied themselves with a body of literature that is foreign to the Word of God, treating it equal to, and in fact above, the Quran itself. Of course, I am talking about the Hadith. Listen, the facts are this. There is no justification within the Quran which tells us to follow this hadith stuff, which came hundreds of years after the Prophet Muhammad died, and therefore he could have had no ability to oversee what people have said about him and determine if it is true or false. It is now becoming crystal clear, especially in the last 10 to 20 years, that many, many things that have been ascribed to him in their most quote-unquote authoritative texts, which they call their Sahih Hadiths, are forgeries that directly contradict God's final revelation. To take these words of men, i.e. the Hadith, and hold them to be equally authoritative to the words of God would be breaking the first and most important commandment, which is to worship God alone, making no equals with Him. To say that these supposed words of Muhammad, which are not even Muhammad's own words, but simply very doubtful rumors about what people who existed hundreds of years after him say he said, that have been decided upon by the scholars as authoritative, holds equal, or in fact any weight in our faith comparable to the verbatim words of God Himself, the Holy Quran, is idolatry. You are exalting man's words to the status of divinity, which should only be given to God's words. Nothing comes even close to the Quran, because God, the creator of the heavens and the earth, is its author. This includes the Hadith too, which pales in comparison and is superfluous to the glorious Quran. If you are interested in seeing a full refutation of the Hadith, you may watch my video titled A Defense of Prophet Muhammad, David Wood and Hadith Exposed, which is linked below. In it, along with refuting and putting in his place the worst opponent of Islam on the internet, Mr. David Wood, I also expose how the Hadith is completely contradictory to the Quran and the source of much of the Muslim world's problems. It is a 2-hour-long documentary where I seek to demonstrate the true character of Muhammad in the Quran, defending his history and personality with primary source quotations. I clear the last prophet of God's name from the people who have tarnished his reputation the most, which are certain types of Christians, and, sad to say, Hadith-following Muslims, which have said many terrible things about him. No, Muhammad was not a money-hungry, tyrannical warlord who married a 6-year-old girl. He was a shy, humble, meek man who married adult women, had compassion for even his worst enemies, and oftentimes had a tough time even standing up for himself out of fear of hurting other people's feelings. This is all demonstrated in detail in my video. Once again, the link for that will be in the description under the tab, The True Character of Muhammad in the Quran. So that is the first problem with the mosques, the reason for which I feel they have been forsaken by God, their adoption of an apostate literature which contradicts their foundational scripture. The second point of contention I have with many of the mosques is their seeming unwillingness to say anything controversial which may make them face persecution from their government. The fact that 9/11 was not only an inside job, but the fact that no planes hit the Twin Towers on that day, and the whole charade was a hoax designed by the governments of the world to forever frame the Muslim people as terrorists and justify invasions in our countries, should be taught to every man, woman, and child. This great fraud of the September attacks has left such a lasting, enduring reputation on every brown person, and Muslim in general, that it should be discussed in every mosque. Our people are not responsible for that crime, but it was the governments of the world who carried out that plot and framed us for it. 9/11 is just only one small example, though. There are many, many other quote-unquote conspiracy theories, which are really just conspiracy facts, avoided by the mosques due to their controversy, like the fact that the monetary system in the West is an ungodly scam based on usury, the fact that the so-called healthcare system is a predatory empire which doesn't try to cure anybody, but instead makes money off of human suffering, the fact that sodomite propaganda is being promoted to the masses, including our children, and the fact that the thing which I will call the C-19er, to avoid censorship, was a hoax perpetrated by the powers that be to greatly expand their police state, censorship incentives, and surveillance systems worldwide in order to create their New World Order, and much more. These governments that have occupied our lands are de facto terrorist regimes, and the mosques seem to say nothing of it. They appear to be more concerned with not being labeled extremists while they live their comfortable, well-funded lives, avoiding topics that are hard to deal with due to the abject persecution they bring. That is my second problem with them. Their, at the very least, lack of awareness, or if not, perhaps lack of willingness to address the real geopolitical situation going on in the world. And lastly, my third trouble with the mainstream mosques, which can also be put into the category of conspiracy facts, is their complete ignorance on the true nature of the earth. It may sound as a shock to you, my viewer, that the Quran, the Bible, and in fact all of the ancient scriptures teach the earth is flat and stationary. This is the only model of the world which is compatible with those texts and also scientifically provable. This flat earth conspiracy, which should really be called the globe earth conspiracy, is one of the biggest lies of the modern world, we are told, and goes in line with what I said earlier about the endemic corruption of the governments of the world. Everything you have been told about where you live is a fabrication, and the space agencies are a shameless hoax. For a fully detailed presentation on the subject of flat earth, where I demonstrate the science, the history, the philosophy, the verses in the Bible and Quran proving it, and much more, you can read my book titled The Flat Earth Manifesto, which is linked in the description. This work runs to nearly 1,200 pages and is practically a textbook on not only the topic of flat earth, but the subject of physics proper, and I expose the biggest fraudulent religion of the West, which is science worship, otherwise known as scientism. As with all of my work, it too is available for free. No, you do not live on a pathetic speck of dust spinning around in the middle of nowhere in space. You live in a brilliant, intelligently designed terrarium created by God and are at the center of the universe. Again, to learn more, the link to the Flat Earth Manifesto will be in the description. Those right there are my 3 biggest scores against the mosques of today. There are more points I could bring up, but these are the major ones. These are the controversies which have estranged me from the rest of the so-called Muslim world. Believe me when I say that I would love to join them, and that it hurts me so deeply that I have to pit myself up against the very institution I was born and raised in, the mosques I attended from childhood, whose carpets upon which I walked, stood, prayed, and listened to the preaching in my earliest years. But that is the price to pay for the truth. My commitment to God and what is right is more important than my emotional attachments to a place that was once dear to my heart. Simply put, this is why I think God has forsaken us. This is why I think that the mosques have been steamrolled by the secular atheist. It is because most of us have abandoned the word of God, neglected preaching the truth, and instead chosen comfort over courageous action. That is my thesis to why this great falling away in the West has taken place. If this sounds shocking to you, if it sounds so unbelievable that the majority of the so-called Muslim world could be deceived so badly, then I simply have these verses in the Quran to show you. In the name of God, the Almighty and the Merciful. Chapter 6, verse 116. And if thou obey most of those upon the earth, they will lead thee astray from the path of God. They follow only assumption, and they are only guessing. Chapter 25, verse 30. And the messenger will say, O my Lord, my people took this Quran as a thing abandoned. God has really predicted this a millennia ago. He knew that the people who follow what is really right are few and far between, that the majority of men and women are led astray, and the people who claim to love Muhammad the most, i.e. mainstream Muslims, would abandon the glorious Quran. God has revealed to us 1,000 years ago that this all would be the case. It is my mission, therefore, by the will of God, to band together with like-minded believers who have understood the truth and work together to build a new institution from the ground up, founded upon prudent fear. We need to start fresh, start anew. We need to build a new mosque where people can hear the unfiltered preaching from the Quran alone, where men and women can get married, where children can play and be educated in the truth, and where the name of the Most High God, without any associate partners, can be remembered. We need a group of highly dedicated men who will raise and defend this institution with their own hands if need be, and go out into the world warning people of the punishment of God, bearing witness to the truth of his oneness. That is my mission, my viewer. If you found that this mission of mine has touched your heart and is something you want to get involved with, then feel free to contact me in the email below. I am located in Ontario, Canada, and I'm looking forward to form a community with like-minded believers who want to contribute to this great cause. I am neither a nationalist nor racially biased. If you follow the Quran alone and believe in the truth, then as far as I'm concerned, you are my brother in the faith. I prefer you over someone of my own kindred who denies God and commits corruption in the earth. My loyalties are primarily ideological, not racial. Remember, my viewer, that this life is short. Everything we do and don't do is recorded by God and will either bear witness for us or against us on the day of judgment. Hell is eternal, and I do not know about you, but as for me, I want to meet my Creator in the best state possible. I want to spend my life struggling to build up my people, the true Muslims, so that God may be pleased with me on that day. If you are interested in that, then feel free to join me. If not, then find something else good to do which will prepare you for your appointment with the Most High. That is where we are all going anyway. With that being said, I say peace and God bless to all of you good people. Take care, everyone.